He knows that we can't change the world drinking coffee in our socks, but he'll ask you to ponder, encourage you to wander, and buy you a drink on the rocks.
I want to welcome everybody to Inspired Path.
Whoa. Wait a minute. You're on the other side of the table today, sir. I will be doing the introductions. Thank you very much. Welcome to Inspired Path. Today we have the Mayor Andy, also known as Dolly Holland, the ever-present, ever right here, right now, Andy Holland. Cue the applause. Andy, I'm going to read this part to you because I thought about it today and I really felt like it was important to say this. I just want to say, in all seriousness, it is truly an honor and a privilege to be the one interviewing you today as you tell your tale of inspiration to our community. Since the day I met you, I have watched a community of really amazing and heartfelt people become attracted to you, gather around you, and jump right in to whatever helpful endeavor you are venturing after. Your kindness and genuineness emanates off of you, and it's like a magnet for the best people. And if you're a good person out there in the Cleveland area and you don't know Andy, he's coming for you next. Anyway.
Well, thank you for the kind words, Tera.
Yeah. You know, I mean it. So definitely thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to interview you, because I feel like your story is one of the most inspirational ones I have ever known and ever heard and ever had a chance to be a part of. And it's really a good thing. And I thank you. So, of course, I know your story. I've watched it, I've experienced it, I've seen what you do. But why don't you go ahead and tell our audience here today how you became enlightened, inspired, and empowered on your path?
Well, I think I have to back up and say one other thing to get my, 2 cents in here. You made the comment about people being drawn to me. And, that part of it's not an accident, and that's not just special to me. That could be to anybody. It's just what you put out in the world, you get back. If you're a genuine person, you're going to end up with genuine people surrounding you. If you treat people like shit, they're not. You're going to get those kind of people around you, and I think, and we've all been there, with that. But the more genuine you are in life, and the more you treat people like they would want to be treated, people just start showing up at the right time to help out.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sort of like you did.
Example.
When you met the Yoga Rocks the Park guy at the bar, which is another whole story. But
speaking of bars, I just want to also point out we flipped the script today. It's not coffee, it's beer. Here we are at Forest City Brewery. Shout out to them for always allowing us to utilize the space, for supporting all of our endeavors. Forest City Brewery, we love them. Thank you so much.
Yeah, since we're flipping the script, absolutely needed to do the beer today instead of the coffee, but also because, when we started all these programs with You Can, You Will, it was a step out from behind the camera, 20 years behind the camera. So to come and host this stuff and to get up in front of crowds and speak, that was a big thing. So when Tera said she wanted to flip the script, it was like, ooh, now I got to be a guest even and answer questions. But in all seriousness, really to get to the point, where I incorporated this stuff in my life and I started teaching the stuff that I was living, you really have to take a look back at how I was in 2005. And really that was like the wheels coming off the treadmill. I mean, I had just got promoted to full-time at UPS. I was running a video production company full-time in Strongsville. I was a trustee on the Chamber of Commerce board. I was vice president of the Arts Council in Strongsville. I was,
And how many hours of sleep did you get a night?
Let's see. There was a lot of napping because there was no such thing as meditation in my life at that time. And I'd have to probably add to that I was, was going through a divorce at the end of 2005 to beginning of 2006. And at the same time, I decided to go back and get my bachelor's degree on Thursday nights. And in addition to that, filming a hip hop project, the Mike Bell project on the streets of Cleveland, in any remaining hours. So in answer to your question, I didn't sleep much, and my medicine cabinet was pretty full of like antacids and things like that, to take care of all the things that go along with stress. And by 2006, June of 2006 to be exact, I landed myself in university hospitals. The journey started out in the emergency room at Southwest, and basically with a doctor coming back saying, there's nothing else we can do for you here after looking at the MRI, some type of spinal degeneration. There's nothing else we can do. We're going to transport you to university hospitals, a neurological intensive care unit.
And weren't you like numb and non-mobile from the waist down?
Yeah. So basically, a couple days before, I started having like some pains or some tightness that wrapped completely around my chest, like 360 all the way around. And I thought it was from working out. I did some bench pressing, and I thought it was just sore muscles. And then progressively in the 2 days got worse. And by Friday, when I, stubbornly walked into Southwest General Hospital under my own power, I pretty much had numbness from the chest down. I could barely get my legs to move to get in there. And it was just, I don't know, it's just like time stops, and you just can't believe that it's you, and your ego keeps saying, but I got jobs to get out. And, and I called off 2 days in a row from UPS, and that's like a taboo there. In the 9 years prior to that, I think I'd maybe called off twice in the entire 9 years. And here I'm calling off twice in a row. And so, I come to kind of after being transported down to university hospitals, and they have a whole team around me, and no one knows like what's wrong, but they're all like poking toothpicks in you, and literally, and you know what a toothpick feels like when they poke it into you. But when they start poking it into you and they start going down your body, and then they realize, oh, well, now it's just this dull touch. It's not that sharp prick. And, so they found like this dividing line that was kind of like chest level like this. And, basically it ended up being 8 days in university hospitals. But to make a long story short with that, the amount of tests and stuff that needed to be done just to figure out that it wasn't some cancer, that it wasn't some tumor, were just excruciating. Spinal Taps. I thought that was it was a fictitious rock band from the 70s. But those tests aren't very fun. And there was lots of them. And after 3 days and some really high doses of steroids, they figured out that it wasn't a tumor, but they still couldn't figure out what it was. So they kept sending tests out all over the country. And they'd come back and they would report to me every day a list of the ugliest diseases you can imagine that I didn't have. Well, you don't have this disease. You don't have Parkinson's. You don't have AIDS. You don't have MS.
But you can't walk and you can't
But
feel.
you can't walk, and we don't know what's wrong with you.
Jeez.
So on about day 4, and at the same time I had this roller coaster of my platelets being so low. Probably on day 4, they came back to me and they said, what we've figured out that with eliminating all these is it could have been a common cold in 1,000 other people, but because of your lifestyle and your schedule, the virus settled on your spinal cord, and that's what's cutting off the circulation for the rest of your body.
So you made yourself sick.
So I made myself sick.
Oh, jeez.
And that was, and I think where, what came out of all of this is, even though I had friends visiting me and I had a lot of family support from my parents, I think what happens is there's still a lot of downtime in a hospital where you're laying there and you're you're there by yourself at night, and, there's a lot of things running through your mind. And there was an opportunity there to blame corporate America, to blame my customers at my video production business, to blame my parents, to blame my, soon to be ex-wife. All those people, I could have just said, well, it's your fault that I work that much. But realistically, when it came down to it, I knew in my heart, that my world stopped and I landed myself in that bed, and no one put me there except myself. And I think that was the moment. Besides, I'm not going to diminish what the doctors did at university hospitals, because it was amazing, the team that I had. But I think was making that shift enabled me to heal. It was that whole shift. That was like the turning point for empowerment. It's like once I accepted responsibility and I made decisions at that point, the first priority was going to be my optimal health. My perfect health was going to be the main focus. And it was that shift that enabled progress to start in a positive direction.
So you got yourself sick, maybe on purpose, and got yourself better.
Well, let's not tell people that, I want to tell people that you don't have to get yourself to such a low point in life to really create change.
Yeah. Maybe the Taurus in you needed it.
Yeah, I think the Taurus in me wouldn't, I don't think, I remember telling my sister even one time when it came down to her wedding video, she was like, I really want you to come and enjoy yourself. Well, I didn't see anybody else doing the production except for me. And I was always
because you had the production company at that time.
And I was always like, love is love, but business is business.
Oh,
and
Andy,
it was like,
no.
Exactly. So what do? I brought my team and we filmed the wedding. So it was like, that was the kind of stubbornness, and, yeah, at that time, people would call me stubborn, the typical Taurus, bullheaded things, as you've come to know, though, I've, changed that term over the years. It's, I liken it to peaceful persistence.
Yes.
And some people go, well, what's the difference? And I go, well, stubbornness is running your head through the wall when the door is 3 feet to your right. I said peaceful persistence is, just walking through the door. Yeah. So.
At least knocking on it, right?
Yeah, or at least giving a knock before you run your head through it.
Love it. I love it. So when you got out of the hospital, what was that like? So you had a shift while you were in there, and you started to heal, and that kind of almost knowing that you had happen, and then you were able to make the changes, but from a hospital bed, what did that look like from the point that you decided, hey, I'm going to take responsibility, to the point that you walked out of the hospital? Tell me a little bit about that.
Well, I think there was a couple different things that were also catalysts there at the hospital besides that. And one was, I think what happens when you decide to take responsibility for something, I think it opens you up to new opportunities. And so what I mean by that is, so when you're in the intensive care unit, you have one team, but when you get moved down to the next floor, you have another team. And I got a doctor that, well, I won't mention names, but let's say he just didn't have a very friendly bedside manner. And I was sitting there in a wheelchair, and he looked at me, and at that time they had diagnosed that, that I had transverse myelitis, which is transverse meaning across, and myelitis is the inflammation of the spinal cord. And he looked at me, and he's reading off a list of things, and he said, you're going to have to get used to, or you may have to get used to having walking assistance the rest of your life, or you may end up with patches on your body that never regain any type of feeling. And
so basically, you're going to either be in a wheelchair with a walker, cane, or maybe I'm beyond a cane and I can walk along, but I'm not going to feel the bottom of my right foot, something like that. Because when the nerves are cut off for a certain amount of time, depending on how much, you don't know what's going to come back. And he was pretty harsh and in my face, and, he left the room, and
tears were just pouring down my eyes. And, there was someone there that kept telling me, you're better than that, Andy. You're better than that. And because I saw myself as like, skiing in the Rocky Mountains in 6 months. This is June. Right? I thought, yeah, snow starts falling. I want to be skiing. And this guy sees me in a wheelchair. And so that really kind of fired me up. And then, the next day physical therapy came down and they ran tests on my legs. And one of the tests they do, because my legs were wrapped in these things called Kens, which are airbags that inflate and deflate to keep the circulation going when you're laying there for such an extended period of time. So they came down and they did these tests where I had my leg out. They put their hand on my leg and they said, push against it. And I couldn't put much pressure on it at all, which after that, they deemed that I couldn't use a walker, because if you can't push on someone's hand, how are you going to swing your leg into a walking motion? So I was really down from that, but I just kept seeing myself getting better. And so later the day, when there was a change in nursing staff, the nurse came in and she says, I thought you were getting a walker. And I said, well, I thought I was getting a walker too. They haven't brought it down. It's been all afternoon. She goes, I'll take care of it. So that's from watching a lot of TV in the 80s, other than, dressing up in the doctor's outfit from the linen closet and escaping. This was the next best thing. So I think she came back with a walker. And so she said, do you want the door shut? And I said, yeah, shut it. I'm just going to rest. Well, I knew I wasn't going to rest. I got up, I unplugged the battery pack from the IV so that I could walk around the room. And I got up and I practiced with the door shut. And then just for a short time, just to know that I could get myself out of bed on myself, which I wasn't supposed to do, and walk around the room, at least within the range of the IV with the walker, was good enough. And then that night, family and friends were there, and I said, well, I want to walk down the hall. So I walked down the hall about halfway, and it was pretty exhausting, because in a short amount of time, your muscles, gain atrophy. And so this had been like day 4 or 5 and just laying there for the most part, except for being moved to wheelchairs and testing. And so I got about halfway down there, and they were like, do you want to rest? And I said, yeah, I'll sit down. And I sat down, and I looked down the hall, and I stood up right away, because right down the hall, I saw that same doctor coming that told me that I would be possibly like this the rest of my life. So I said, I want to be walking in this walker next day after. Yeah. And so I started walking towards him, and he, I wouldn't say that he had, overly kind words, but the look on his face was priceless, because he was really surprised, and I'm going to jump ahead and just tell you one thing with that, because something that I didn't find out till this past year when I was working on some manuscripts for my book. We have to be careful in life that, because we don't always know what it's like walking in someone else's shoes. And I looked up when I was tracing back names for the book. I came across his name and I remembered who he was, and I looked him up on medical documentation, and so I Google searched him. And he had passed away, I believe, in 2019. And he had died of a rare, I believe, neurological disease. So the same field that he was in there, that he had worked his whole life on, he had passed away at that. And there was comments by his wife in there that no one knew what kind of pain he was in. And so it shed a whole different light on this. Obviously I used him as a catalyst along with my own beliefs to get better, not be a victim. But I had no ideas how critical I was, because believe me, I didn't have nice words when I would talk to friends about him after I got out of the hospital. Yeah. Had no idea what it's like. So that was a lesson that, I didn't really fully understand till, this past year. But you truly don't. When someone treats you poorly, you treat them back with kindness, because you really don't know what they're going through. Maybe they haven't worked through stuff. Maybe they don't know how to cover that up, but you truly don't know. So those were the catalysts, I think, that got me. I walked out after 8 days with a cane, but still a long way to go. Months of being in and out of the hospital, and still a lot of ego left.
Well, now that your ego has been burned away, obviously that impacted you a lot. And how exactly did you find the meditation and the empowerment and like the yoga community and experience that you are so now ingratiated into?
Yeah, you know what, the yoga experience, so after going through something like that, you start searching for help. You start looking for other people out there. You start reading things, because basically the other decisions that I made, there was really, out of that whole long list of stuff I gave you from the end of 2005, the beginning of 2006, the other decision that went along with it that enabled me to continue to heal was everything on that list, excluding 4 things I gave up in my life. So my first priority was, focus on my perfect or optimal health. My second priority was, to have a strong father-daughter relationship with Annie. My third was graduating with my bachelor's degree, which I did in 2009. And the fourth was UPS, to focus on my full-time career. So I closed the business, I resigned from every board, and quit every project. And so I simplified my life down to 4 things. So once I did that, I had time. So I read more books in the next 5 years than I probably read in the first 40 years of my life, which is kind of impossible because I'm only 38 now to begin
That's
with.
True. That's true.
Thought I'd add that in there. But so I went from the fast food and bar circuit to the coffee circuit. So people would joke around, I'd show up at Civilization, or, on some days I'd be at Starbucks in Strongsville. And, one of the days that I was there, I was reading a book by a local author called Sandra Ann Taylor. And someone walked up to my table, that I'd worked with through the Arts Council, and it was Kim, who owned this Kim School of Dance in North Royalton, and we got talking, and I said, yeah, in this book, and I'm reading some Wayne Dyer, I just found out who he is, and they all seem to practice yoga. And she goes, well, I teach yoga on Monday nights, and you could jump in at any time. Well, let's just say, in prior years, I would have been supportive of someone in a relationship that I was with, and encouraged them to go to yoga, maybe bought them a mat, but nah, not for Andy. So it was about a week later, and I'm sitting there at the same Starbucks, and I go, it's Monday night. I go, it wouldn't hurt to go buy a yoga mat at Target, which was behind Starbucks in Strongsville. And I said, if I go back to my apartment, I made myself kind of this deal, and I call Kim's School of Dance, and she answers, I guess I'm going. I said, if not, well, it looks like I'm not going to practice yoga. So of course I called, and she's like, Kim's School of Dance, and I go, in a real sheepish voice, I think I went, this is Andy. She goes, Andy, are you coming tonight? And so I showed up there, and showed up with my mat and some shorts and a t-shirt on, and there's all these little kids coming out of the dance class before, and all these yoga people coming in, and that was like, I think that was either 2008 or 2009, but it is so vivid to me because I go to walk into the studio and I felt someone pulling on my shirt, and I turn around and this girl goes like this, because I was walking into the studio with my shoes on. I had no idea that you'd go into the studio.
There is protocol.
There's protocols. And that was this girl, Stacy, and we became amazing friends. But that was the first introduction to that. And you know what? I went because I saw it in the books and I heard good things about it. So I go practice 2-3 weeks in a row. And at that time I was working very early at UPS, going in at like 3 a.m, and this class wasn't done till like 9 p.m. So I was going to get like 5 hours. But I noticed that on Tuesday mornings after this yoga class, that even though I only slept 5 hours, I really felt like clear-headed and rested. And I'm going, and the first time I thought, well, this is just a fluke, you know? But when it happened the second and third time, I'm like, there's something to this. There's something to either the practice or the quieting your mind or taking time for yourself, or maybe a combination of all those things. I had no idea what it was, but I signed up for more. I kept going back, and I became like a regular there on Monday nights.
I love it.
And so that's kind of was the first introduction to yoga. And then it was just like, I think what happens is once you swing that door open or expose that rabbit hole, it's like, how deep do you want to go? Because this world just opens up that I think that, you know, that most people are shut off from, because, and I was too, because when you're in that mode of just multitask, you know, way more than you could ever get done on your to-do list in a day, the grind.
Yeah. Ugh.
I think you don't realize these things are out there, and the amount of stuff. And it's not just yoga, it's mindfulness, it's meditation, it could be tai chi, you know, it could be just relaxation, it could be any of those things, taking time and walking in the park, but anything to like give that space. You know, to use a Wayne Dyer, you know, quote, it's the space between the notes that creates the music, you know. And people can laugh about that and go, oh, and you know, but the realistic thing is, if you didn't, it would just be a solid tone. So it's creating that space, I think, and once that starts to open that door, you're like, you get excited. You're like, wow, there's a whole world here.
It's the meaning of life.
Exactly. It's like you're unplugging yourself from the Matrix.
Which pill did you take, Andy?
Right, exactly. And I will give that little disclaimer on here that once you do take the red pill, there is no going back.
Yeah. I love it.
The comfort zone is gone from what you might have, might have known before.
But it is a practice, right?
It is. There absolutely is. There's days when I get up and I jump into my email and I get going on stuff, or I allow something to take me out of that space. And you really have to work, I think, to create that time for yourself.
So obviously, like, you know, going through what you did and making these shifts and adjustments and changes and becoming more privy to the world of yoga and meditation and self-care and community and opening up your heart to walking the life that you've been walking, it's, you know, given you Benjamin Button disease and you've aged backwards. And you're enjoying yourself a lot more, I would assume, than in your previous grinding life of work, and, you know, getting things done and checking off your list. So, you know, I kind of want to talk a little bit more about, you know, now let's put you into the present moment where you've, you know, made these changes in your own life and you've taken that knowledge and you've tried to pass it on to others in a variety of ways. Reaching out to the community, reaching out to individuals out of just a love in your heart and a labor of love to help people to empower themselves. I want to talk to you a little bit about, I don't want you to tell me about how that's impacted other people's lives, because I know you've got some inspiring stories on how Andy Holland, the Dolly Holland, has, I mean, I could tell my own stories, but, you know, let's let you take the microphone here.
Yeah, I think that, you know, something happens when you are healed or come from a low point in your life. And, you know, it's through these experiences you want to give back. You know, you want to help people. There's like this calling to, hey, it worked in my life and I'm just an ordinary person. So that means it can work in everybody's life. Like, this isn't like exclusive to Andy Holland, you know, my life crashed in this way, but so many people go through addictions or abuse or things in their own life that create this very low point. And really, you know, what I did working through it, you know, was just proof to me, because I think a lot of times we really just have to experience things for ourselves, and then we're like, it's that experience that stays ingrained that gives you the power to move forward. You know, when someone just tells you about it, it's like, well, that's nice. It worked for you. But when you experience it and go through and create change, you want to help other people. At first, I think you just want to shout it to everybody, even if they don't want to hear.
It's magic.
Yeah, it's magic. It works. But I think now it's to the point where people start coming to you, and you mentioned specifics, but you look at things like, I think the most rewarding thing is the schools. We did so many events in Lincoln Park, and it was amazing and all of that. And, there was individuals that would come up to you and thank you for, building community. And one thing that we were very big on when we did any community events is we wanted to be all inclusive. And I think that there was a meeting prior to the first Yoga Rocks the Park, and I sat down with an interviewer from Cleveland.com, and there's about 6 of us sitting at Civilization, and we were bringing in people from Colorado to teach and do different things like that, so national people, and it wasn't inexpensive for the first events down there, and so it was all nice and chit chat till the tape recorder got turned on. And then the first question she throws out, or one of the first questions, is, what if people can't afford to come to your event? Are you going to turn them away? And I think that was a huge factor, because everybody just kind of got silent and looked at me. And there was 6 people sitting around that could have joined in on that question. Emily.
Shout out to Costa Rica.
Shout out to Costa Rica there. But I think what that was also a catalyst, because that also made us reflect. And I said, well, we would first ask them for a donation. And I said, if they couldn't donate, they would be allowed into the event at no charge, because we don't want to turn anybody away. And that was not rehearsed. It was not discussed ahead of time. That was just something that was just like an inspiration that came to me, that was like, this is what we need to do in this community, because we really need to bring people together. And what we found out, and just like all businesses that compete against each other, the yoga business in the community is the same way. There's a lot of competition in that. And I understand from the business owner side, but one thing that we try to do throughout our events is we refused any studio sponsorship. We wanted to bring community together, people together, and it was all done. So these little lessons were all done along the way. But I think ultimately the most rewarding part is when we shifted from our community events into the schools. Because here you go, into the schools, and you start working with students and staff, and these students aren't going home, and their parents aren't paying a $15 or $17 drop-in fee to go to a studio. Some of the places that they live are in food deserts, and so the convenience there, where you're not getting much nutrition, dense foods from a convenience. And so when we started to look at things like that, and we started to see the need, and it's like, this is where we need to teach people empowerment. They can all end up talking about being victims, from where they grew up, or the odds that were stacked against them. But if they can use some of the tools from our community partners, and some of the stories that they would tell us, where we learned how to meditate, we learned how to respond rather than react to a situation. All those things that they could implement from our community partners right into their daily lives. Huge things like, when you fail a test, instantly you want to blame the teacher, you want to blame your parents, you want to say I didn't have enough time to study, but really, maybe you didn't spend any time. But it's when you take ownership of that you learn to hey, you're taking your power back. So that student who would normally blame someone else, if they started to understand that maybe it's their fault they did poorly, maybe they didn't understand the subject and they were afraid to ask for help. But it's something that they did that caused them to get that grade. And all they really did is produce a result. So once they learn that it's okay to accept responsibility. Hey, you know what? I didn't study at all. I went out and played basketball with my friends. But I got that bad grade. But now that I know that, I can change the next grade. Because once you give your power away, it's up to the teacher, it's up to the parents, it's up to someone else. So it was stories like that where just individuals who would come up to us and say that, what an impact that hour made,
Working with students is amazing.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. And I also think too, for the people who work with them, like there's such an emotional uplift that you get knowing that you can impact a youth's life, that they can then grow and flourish into their adulthood and be whatever they want to be. Like, that's just so amazing. You did a good job. Good job. High five. I love it. The last question I wanted to kind of volley at you is, with your belief system that you've incorporated into your life, there's a lot of like law of attraction. I want to kind of talk to you a little bit about delving into that part of how you see that play out in your everyday life, where it's not just the mundane grinding life. It is this life on a different path, on a different vibration, where amazing people are attracted to you, amazing things are happening. You're living this life that you could only ever even maybe have glimpsed or slightly daydreamed of, that like is just full of fun and excitement. But like, how do you see the magic kind of appear? Like, what things happen to you on your daily life that tells you, oh, that's a sign. That's a sign that this is real. This isn't just woo-woo, as we call it.
Yeah, I think we always like to throw that in there.
Yeah,
when,
like a disclaimer.
That little disclaimer.
You may think this is woo-woo, but...
Right. We're going to, just like Wayne used to say, when things are weird, I'm going to point them out that they're weird, so you just don't think I don't know that, that they're weird.
I may be weird too.
Yeah, exactly.
There might be a little bit of that.
I would say that one of the other tools that I used for, getting better was kind of a process that I got from Wayne Dyer, was called thinking from the end. And that's kind of a visualization process. So, which kind of works the same way as they talk about in a lot of law of attraction stuff and a lot of things like that, is, you visualize how you see yourself. So for instance, if you're not happy with the weight that you're at, it doesn't do a lot of good to sit here and go, yeah, I was 4 sizes smaller in high school, and, I look in the mirror every day and say you're fat. I think what it does is you see yourself how you want to be, and something happens in the mind when you use visualization. Just like when let's use the example, like when I saw myself skiing in the Rocky Mountains 6 months after I, was laying there in bed, that was my visual. That's how I saw myself. And I kept that as my focus. And what tends to happen is when you focus on that, in this present moment, you start to do things, or you're inspired to do things or take actions that get you there. So maybe with the weight loss example, you're inspired to, go to fitness classes, or you're inspired to, eat healthier or explore healthy alternatives to start, changing your lifestyle. So I think what happens is you're drawn to do things like that just by the fact that you're visualizing this is your outcome. And I think there's a couple secrets to that. So one is, when you're trying to manifest something or create something for yourself, you keep it to yourself. And I think that's the biggest thing. And it's not that you're lying to people, but what happens when you're trying to, we'll use the weight loss thing as an example, and say you've been overweight for an extended period of time. If you go and tell all the people, all your friends, that, hey, by this date, I'm going to be in this shape and I'm going to be hiking to Machu Picchu, you're going to end up with people going, Andy, I know you love hamburgers and fries and Jenny's ice cream.
And beer from Forest City.
And beer from Forest City. And you're going to end up, how could you ever do that? And this is what happens So let me borrow one of your beers there. So what happens is, so here's this thing that you want to, you're putting all your energy on, manifesting this weight loss or skiing in the mountains or whatever you're trying to do. And now you got this friend over here that's been friends with you for 15, 20 years, and they're telling you, I know you like all that junk food. You can never do it. So now you've taken the attention off what you're trying to create in your life, and you've shifted it to explaining and defending to that friend on, well, I'm going to go to the gym 2 days a week. And then the friend's going to go, you won't keep that up. And you're going to have to keep putting energy into like explaining and defending that. And the more people you tell, the more people you're going to have to explain and defend. Now your energy's fractured like this.
So are you going to put some of that beer into that cup for me?
Well, we can do that too. And then it's sharing some of my energy with you.
Oh, thanks, Andy. I love your energy.
But I think that's that's one of the secrets to it. I think, but also what happens when you start attracting these people into your life, you learn who you can share stuff with. So you begin to develop this tribe or community that you can share these things with, and they're not going to ask you how you're going to do it or say you can't do it. You're going to tell them about your dreams, and they're going to be unconditionally supporting those there by your side. Like, how can they help make this dream come true? Yeah. So, it's not telling it to anybody, but it's just being selective as to who you share that dream with. So I don't usually share things with a lot of people until they're past that halfway baked point, that like it's almost like materialized in this reality that maybe the airline's ticket is bought for the trip. Maybe you've created the abundance to be able to, book that dream vacation, or maybe you've already started that, weight loss journey where you've developed the habits for the first few months and there's already results happening. Because what that does is that more of it's a reality. It's got more momentum behind it. Your manifestation or your creation's got more
less to defend because it's almost already done.
Exactly.
Don't tell me it's not going to be done. It's almost already done.
Right. And it comes back to that experience thing. Because you've experienced some of that stuff already, maybe you've lost the first 5 to 10 pounds, or maybe you've gotten part of the abundance in your life to, book this dream vacation. You already seen the results and you already can go, yeah, I can do that. I can do that thing, So people have a harder time changing your mind. And, when someone comes up to you and goes, well, there's no way you can do that. Right now, you've gotten to a point where you don't even waste your energy defending it. You're like,
it's already happening.
Yeah, in your world, it probably is a bunch of like woohoo stuff. But in my world, it works.
Yeah.
And that's great. I never try to twist anybody's arm and this stuff.
Yeah. You just don't let them know. You just let them watch.
Yeah, exactly.
I love
you just sit back and watch. And it's not even the thing where I'll show you.
No.
It's not even like that. It's like, I want you to be on board. I want you to be able to do stuff in your life because anybody can do this stuff. We spend so much time distracted by, all the things that are going on in this world. And, you and I have talked about this before. There's more common ground between human beings than there is differences. But we all want to focus on the differences. So it's like, turn off the news.
Turn it off already.
I haven't had cable TV in 12 years, so,
Turn it off and look to your neighbor because they're having a party and you should join. Well, I had a lovely time this evening. Did you?
Yeah, absolutely. This is,
feeling it.
Yeah, I'm feeling good too. Absolutely. Want to thank our friends at Forest City. Absolutely. It's just that's another thing that people want to get behind what you're doing. When you focus from the attitude, which we all do at the foundation, you too as well, Tera, focus on the attitude of like, how may I serve? Not worrying about like what's in it for us.
Right. Or how do we look
to other people? It's like, when we come to the event, no matter whether there's 2 people there or 2,000 people there, it's like they're there for a reason and they're there to hear something. And something you're going to share with them is going to resonate in their life, and you want to give your best to that.
Well, I want to say thank you again for allowing me to be on the flip side of the table and give you a good interview, because you're truly inspiring, and I'm so glad you're my friend.
Absolutely, Tara. I love our friendship, and thank you for convincing me that I needed to be sitting in this seat.
Yeah. And now let's convince me that we need to be doing an empowerment weekend at Wade Oval.
Absolutely. There's a, I will say there's lots of things in store.
Yeah.
Lots of you can, you will is just basically begun. Even though it's 7 years old, it's basically just begun.
Starting to blossom. So join us, friends. Join us in impacting the community. You too can feel great.
We are always looking for, genuine people to come on board and help. And even if it's just something as like, subscribing to our YouTube channel or sharing our social media or, guiding someone that you feel, can benefit from this. I mean, I think one of the things even that we used to always say with 52 weeks of fitness, it was like, the hardest thing to do is that getting someone in the door for the first time.
Yeah. To try something new. But that will help them, but they're afraid to try something new.
Absolutely. And so we used to always say, grab that loved one, that friend, that coworker that hasn't been in the first time, and walk them through the door. Show them hold their hand, show them what the stuff is like and how it can impact and change their lives and what a difference it makes. And that is a true gift to give someone.
And it's not just the gift that you give the person, it's the gift that you get to hold in your heart. I love it.
Absolutely. and to take an old movie thing, it's the gift that keeps on giving.
Yeah, it's true. And then they become part of the Vibe Tribe, and they'll always support you in like your crazy woo-woo endeavors and be like cheering you on. You can do whatever you want to do.
Absolutely.
That's awesome.
Well, that's one of our beliefs. You can do whatever you believe you can in this world.
That's right. Awesome. Let's go do more
Thank
things.
you. Thank you, Tara.
I love you, Andy.
Love you too. Thank you so much for watching us on Inspired Path. If you've got an inspiring story or know somebody that's inspiring, hit us up in the comments below. And of course, give us a thumbs up if you like what you heard, subscribe to our channel, and hit that notification bell. Thank you.